Sure, I think so.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Travis. This is great. Thank you for having me here. My name is Gus McCarley. I'm the Director of the Department of Transportation for the City of Dallas. So we, as Travis mentioned, we work closely with TxDOT on all projects, and particularly on this one. So I wanted to kind of take a high level view and then start working my way down to the local level. So the question is, why is this project so important? And why is this segment of 1.4 miles is so important? So that's the fundamental question. The issue here is this segment of the freeway is on the federal freight network, which means that this is a roadway that is so important from a strategic standpoint to the Federal Highway Administration in the United States Department of Transportation. So the discussion about the freeway and its importance and why it is important for it to be functioning has national implications beside the regional, state, and local. Number two, from the state level, it is on the state freight network, and it is a critical node and critical connectivity, if you will, especially, for example, as we start seeing right now with the chip manufacturing that is happening in Sherman, and the connections of all the supplies that are coming in from the Port of Houston going into Oklahoma and so on. And correct me if I'm wrong, it is only 25% of that traffic, that is about 200,000 vehicles a day, goes into downtown Dallas, and the rest of it is through traffic in and out of using that roadway. So as you can see, this is an important, I call it vein, if you will, in the transportation system when we're talking about that. The other item that we're looking at here is considering the fact that we need to, and the approach is to take advantage of all the federal funds that are available, especially the reconnecting communities and so on. This highway, by removing the overhead section and then burying it and reconnecting and restoring the street network grid, allows us to reconnect communities, whether it be in the Deep Ellum, the Dallas Arts District, the downtown, uptown, and the core central area of the city of Dallas. So that is being restored. And if you start looking at the congestion level, or the classification, if you will, if I'm not mistaken, Woodall is number one in the area, and then this one, I-45, 345 is like 2 or 3 in this area. So we've got the top 2 or 3 freeways in North Texas, basically, that are the most congested freeways in the city of Dallas. So this is so important for us to kind of do that. With that, we're also looking at, from our perspective, I'm looking at things from a system perspective. So we've got the I-30, we call it the Canyon area, which is between I-45 and I-35. That segment is about to get going here in summer of 2024. We're predicting that reconstruction of that segment of downtown is going to get going pretty soon. And one of the things that we're trying to do and work with TxDOT is to make sure that, for example, if this project gets funded, we need to get the I-30 segment done before we start handling this one. The other thing is the Dallas voters approved the convention center. So the convention center construction will be happening at the same time as the I-30 reconstruction in downtown. And also, in addition to all that, we've got other projects that will be ongoing at the same time. So we're looking at this from a strategic perspective of how the system will continue to function while all these things are happening. And I will get to that in a moment. The other thing that Travis had mentioned is the part of the restoration of the street grid and the doing the hybrid depressed on this project is the ability to put in the deck caps on top of the project, on top of the freeway. The deck cap, and the reason I'm mentioning it as a deck cap and not a deck park is because the deck cap can be used for deck parks, but the one thing that I've been hearing more often, which affects or impacts this community and the businesses here, is the fact that a lot of individuals who live in this area work in Deep Ellum, and when they go there, they can't find the parking for their own vehicles, and they cannot have a good way of being able to be at work on time and so on. So one of the things that could be, with input from the community, is we utilize one of those deck caps for the provision of the parking for the employees in Deep Ellum, as well as an area for the pickup and drop off for the Ubers and Lyfts and so on to improve the circulation in Deep Ellum and so on. So these are some ideas that are being talked about and so on. Thus, the importance of the alternative that has been recommended by TxDOT as the hybrid alternative that would help us move forward. So then the question becomes, okay, what's in it for me? How is it gonna impact me? I work here, or I have business here. How am I gonna get down there during construction? And how am I gonna come up from the north, coming back this way, and so on. So usually when, and by the way, I mean, just, I forgot to mention that I am a TxDOT product, so I spent 24 years, 25 years with TxDOT, so I know I can view it from both sides. So one of the things that we will be doing is working closely with TxDOT on innovative approaches to the handling of the traffic during construction. Obviously, there's no two ways about it. Anytime that you have construction, especially in heavily urbanized areas, construction is not gonna be easy. Especially on this one here, because now you're going from an elevated structure into a depressed section. So we're dropping from the current elevation, if you consider the current elevation as here, and then the future elevation of the freeway is down here. So we're dropping about 60 feet, right? So because it's gonna be about 15 feet and then plus another 30. So I call it 40 feet or something like that. The point being is, we're having to kind of potentially have to have it done in phases. And part of the things that we have done in the past, in whether, I mean, you know, in collaboration with TxDOT, is we use the technology as part of the process. And just a basic 101 in transportation planning, you have the supply, the demand, and the lane use. So the supply meaning how many lanes you have, the demand is how many users want to use the facility, and number 3 is basically the land use on where people want to go. So what we have been doing in the past is to try to address the demand side of it. The demand side is potentially, it could be potentially, is the idea of working with, say, the employers in downtown or in other places, whereby saying, hey, if you're starting your business hours at 8 o'clock, how about if you start at 7 and start smoothing out that curve of, instead of having our congestion time, if you will, being focused or concentrated between 7 and 8, maybe we'll start spreading it from 6:30 to 8:30 or 9 o'clock. So therefore, we're able to accommodate more in the smaller footprint while the construction is being done. The other thing is employment of other items, such as we, on complicated projects like that, and most likely this one will have that, is to have a pre-positioning of wreckers on the roadway, just in case there is an incident, to quickly deploy instead of having to call and, hey, come in and do that, and then the freeway is backed up and so on. So what we have done in the past is pre-position them and some locations, and have people kind of be able to kind of clear the incidents much faster. Number 3, which is currently what I'm doing with the, and we'll be doing with the convention center as we start constructing that convention center. Work with our stakeholders on marshaling the trucks and knowing what path they're gonna take so that we can start adjusting the traffic signal timing to get people moving and get these things in a better operation. So for example, focus on overnight work on the freeway, minimal during the day, and focus more during the day on our users of the freeway and adjust those things. The other thing is the employment of technology, if you will, like on your apps and stuff, so that just in case there is an accident or something, you get notified, and for those who subscribe to it, get notification and say, hey, maybe you need to seek alternate routes so that you can route yourself around and so on. And then lastly is continuous and robust public outreach and working with Dallas independent school districts, the schools, the stakeholders that will be impacted by the corridor as we move through that process. So all to say, in the sense that this is an important project. In summary, I mean, this is an important project. Collaboration and robust outreach is critical for us to kind of maintain the conversation. And then there are some things that we don't know that you know. So we really need your active involvement, your feedback. And sorry to say that, but no idea is a stupid idea. Please propose, suggest, let us know, have your feedback, and we will incorporate those and try to make those adjustments and accommodate as we try to move forward. So with that, I'll stop here in the interest of time, so and we'll happy to take a few questions.
Any questions?
Right. Dr. Ricardo?
Thank you. First of all, thanks for the presentation and for the valuable information for the community here. My question is, if this is a project that we have already started, what is the time for completion?
Okay, so we're still in the high-level stages, but
yeah, it's highly dependent on many factors, but we were able to continue moving forward. We've got construction funding. This is a very large project, so once we start, it's going to be probably a 3 to 4 year project once the construction begins. We've got to go through schematic environmental process. So right now, that's about an 18-month to 2 year process, and then we've got to move through utility relocation. So again, I know I'm giving vague answers, but we're 2 to 4 years before we start talking about beginning construction, and then 3 to 4 years for construction.
Thank you.
And just real quick, I forgot to mention that we're very pleased to have Senator West's Chief of Staff, Mr. Kelvin Bass.
Chief of Staff,
Okay,
that's
so-
great.
I see the Chief of Staff. So Kelvin, thank you for being here and for the Senator's support and involvement in this. Appreciate it very much.
I just wanted to ask about Woodall Rogers. Is the integration of Woodall Rogers part of the plan, or how are you impacting integrating Woodall Rogers into the work that y'all are going to be doing?
So
Yeah, we stopped just shy of where Woodall Rogers ties into US 75. So our project will tie 345, or what is that connection, pretty much at the same grade where US 75 is now. So the connection from Woodall Rogers going up and over won't change. So it'll basically remain the same.
I think if I'm not mistaken, we're making minor refinements or improvements to the interchange movement, especially from the eastbound to southbound. Adding that ramp and fixing it so that it lands. I think this is the one that we're landing in.
Improvements.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. But overall, the interchange is staying where it's at, like Travis mentioned. Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't that area, like between Farmers Market and Development, severely flooded in the last big rain? And where some of the first floors of those apartment buildings were flooded? And so if you're depressing, what's the plan for flood control across that area?
So I can't speak, as far as city flooding?
I don't know about the flooding. I know when we had I-30 had some flooding, and not because it was flooded, it's because we had some of the drainage systems that were clogged up, and we cleared them. But as far as the depressed, hybrid depressed, I think TxDOT has done a great job in the initial analysis that the freeway will gravity drain and should be okay.
Correct, so that just means, Gus is right, we should be able to drain it with natural gravity. We won't need a pump station, which would be the other alternative that has more maintenance and issues with it. So it should be able to just drain out naturally, I guess, once we.
Yeah, hi, everybody, I'm Penny, liaison and policy advisor for Councilman Jaime Mendez, here representing him today, and I'd like to ask two questions. How many of you have kind of been staying aware of this project or knew about it before today? Okay. How many of you support the hybrid version of the plan?
Versus what?
The other three. The other version that's really being pushed is to turn it back into a boulevard.
No.
Okay, so let's review the question. Let's say, if you had to decide on the hybrid or the boulevard, which one would you support? Hybrid? Boulevard? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benny. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I started the conversation about how it is important to the federal highway system and the US DOT. So, even the question about its feasibility is questionable.
You provided a nice segue, Penny. Kevin Bass again, Center West Office.
It's not planned.
And I have been involved in each one of those steps ever since the initial debate, discussion of the removal of I-345. The first public comment, the second public comment, the deal down at Farmers Market, I guess that was last year before last, all the way, the city map process. If there's been 30 meetings, I've been at 25 of them. Silver West is adamantly in support of the continuance and now the hybrid alternative for I-345.
I'm sorry, did you say he's opposed?
In support, adamantly in support. And the joke was, none of us knew actually what 345 was. And so we got in the car one day and I said, this is it, Senator. So we're coming from 67 to 35, and we took, you take the exit like you're going to Denison. You're going north to 75. And when we got up to the top of the ramp, you're on 345 now. None of us ever knew that was 345. But for the people who supported the removal alternative, if you want to see somebody go dumbfounded and begin to stutter and stammer and maybe prevaricate, ask them what to do with the nearly 200,000, anywhere from 165,000 to 200,000 traffic count that frequents that every day, from southwest, from southeast, and from south to north. I grew up in South Dallas. My mother worked for, it was Collins Radio then it was Alcatel, and I don't know what that is out there now, but the whole telecom card, anybody coming in from south uses that on a daily basis, even if you're getting off at the Presbyterian or the Medical City Complex, they use that. If you are going from southwest and still going north on 75, you use that. If you're coming from southeast to connect to north and even to I-35, you have two choices, but one of those choices is to use 345. So I'll stop there. This is a way to get me lathered up when somebody starts talking about it. Thank you.
And I will add that Councilman Mendez also wholeheartedly supports the hybrid version after looking at all the options. It is critical to our city to have freeways.
Yes, sir.
I do have one last question, and you mentioned that you're still looking for some more funding for the project. Where is this funding coming from? Private or
Yeah.
public?
So the majority of our textile projects are federally funded. So there's several, Gus mentioned some grant opportunities, but the majority of our projects are federally funded. We've also got state revenues that come in through Prop 1 and Prop 7. So Texas has got a lot of opportunities, and so in Dallas, we work on a multitude of projects. To kind of draw a line, we've got construction funding, but then we've got planning. So we're able to progress planning prior to the project being fully funded in construction. And the further you get down that planning process, the more you can kind of compete for that construction funding. So the farther the job gets along and the more clearances we get, the more attractive it is for grants and federal funding of those options. But there's several alternatives, a lot of them being federal, and then there's also quite a bit of state revenues as well.
And I will add, just real quick, is that the fact that the city council unanimously approved and supported this project, that will add an additional, or provide an additional incentive and support and help, if you will, in securing those funds. So this is great for our city and for the region as a whole, as a system. Yes, sir.
Is Dallas getting any of the infrastructure bill funds?
So we are applying for several grants, if you will. We have secured some. And as a matter of fact, the US 175 at Lake June is one of the grants that we obtained to replace that bridge out here, and to completely redo that area and provide the shared use path for the train loop and all that stuff. So a lot of good things are happening here. We've got federal funding for Elam, Safe Route to School, to connect from the AT&T trail all the way to Jim Miller, and we're replacing the traffic signal at Jim Miller, completely upgrading it to make it safer to cross Jim Miller and Elam. So there are a lot of things, a lot of good things are happening in this area and for this community. So we're very proud of it, and we will continue to try and continue to try to secure as many grants as we can. But certainly that, and then related to 345, once we're kind of pretty much setting the crossings, if you will, of the grids over the freeway, then we will be looking at what improvements that needs to take place for the grid on both sides. And we do have a grant for the reimagining downtown that we got it from Federal Highway, which will help us basically start looking at the overall any potential improvements for the grid from downtown into Deep Ellum and in that area. So a lot of good things are happening. A lot of stuff that will be, that the city is and will be proud of once we're